Rabbit, rabbit.
Rabbit, rabbit. Hi, everyone. I'm Amit Parikh, and with me is Dave Orlandi. Dave and I are senior consultants with Quest Software, and we offer up this podcast delivered the first of every month, hence the name, and discuss topics relevant to the IT industry with an emphasis around database performance. How's it going today, Dave?
Everything's great, Amit. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain. I mean, we just got through our annual corporate kickoff meetings last week, which was pretty exciting. I'm sure you feel the same.
Absolutely. It's a kind of a good way to, kind of dive in. And now our heads are down and the fiscal year has begun. We go through January and February 1st kind of starts the next year, and back at it with our evaluators and customers alike and having some pretty fun conversations.
Yeah, and I think it's also a chance for the whole organization to get together now. Unfortunately, however which way you look at it, but we weren't able to meet in person. But usually what Software Kickoff does for companies like ours is gives our entire sales organization a chance to meet with each other, interact, enable, or become much more field ready, and also understand what our go-to-market strategies are today. So I think, with all of that being said, I guess it's time to introduce our special guest today, right?
Yes, as our listeners know, sometimes we have guests, other times we don't. I'm feeling, quite honestly, a bit giddy this morning because our guest is not only a peer and coworker of ours, he's also a very good friend. I speak with him daily, sometimes about work, other times just bouncing off ideas, and yet other times we're doing movie quotes or just getting each other to laugh. And not only that, we like to have our share of doing some impressions as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ben Boyce.
Hello, hello. How are y'all doing?
Very well.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I was going to try to lead with a, I don't know, a little walk-in. You said impressions. They're never great, but they are here. So, and sometimes. Yes. Oh gosh. Yeah, I know. I suffer from an only child syndrome, which means I'm trapped in my own head, which is the scariest playground on the planet. Yeah. So as you had introduced, I am a teammate of yours, and obviously we are friends, and I support our database performance monitoring solutions. But a little known fact for a lot of folks is that when I first started with Quest, actually it was my first engagement into sales engineering, I supported our Toad solutions, and Amit was actually my manager. So he was instrumental in helping me evolve in this field, and I am so grateful to be here. So thank you all very much for having me.
Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. That's a little bit of history here. I mean, Dave, myself, Ben included, there are a number of us that have had the great fortune of just being part of this Quest journey. And yes, Ben was introduced to me back in the mid 2000s, and thankfully our stars had aligned, both from a career and goals perspective, but we also enjoyed this passion for consulting. So great to have you, Ben. And, I mentioned passion. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on this call. During kickoff, we talked a lot about how we can engage with our customers and how to make the most out of our sales opportunities. Well, Dave, why don't you tell us specifically why you thought Ben would be a great choice for today's podcast?
Sure, happy to do it. So one reason that's probably clear already is the high energy that Ben brings to basically any conversation and keeps it up and fun. But probably the other main reason I wanted to invite Ben is because of the particular topic that you and I chose, Amit, the art of discovery. And so I'm sure most all of our listeners out there are familiar with the concept, that kind of initial conversation with an evaluator or a customer. And we'll talk more about that. But when we decided on this particular topic, almost immediately, I thought of Ben because it is, just like you said, he's very passionate about the topic and making sure that that part of, for lack of a better term, sales cycle, that part of the sales cycle needs to really be on point, thorough. And if you don't have good discovery on the front end, then it doesn't set up well for the rest of the relationship with your evaluator or customer.
It's very precious.
Gollum.
Yeah, I think the reality is that you guys know it's hard to keep me quiet with any sort of thing. But yes, discovery is really a passion of mine. In my opinion, it really is the mutual exchange of information with a specific goal or specific goals in mind. It's almost like dating in the business world, right? Where we're trying to decide, okay, do I have anything to offer this individual? And conversely, does this individual have anything to offer me? And equally important, do we decide to have another date?
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah, that's interesting how you bring it up. It's almost like, deciding whether or not you have the right to move forward, or whether or not there even is a reason to move forward. Is that a fair way to explain that, Ben?
That is absolutely right. We run into this challenge a lot, right? Where the reality is we need a tremendous amount of information, right? Just because somebody has a database that we support doesn't really mean they need our solutions. And what we really want to understand are their critical business issues, and how we might be able to help them. But the reality is we know we're not going to have all of that information up front. The last thing we want to do is to turn a discovery into an interrogation, right?
I'm glad you brought that up, Ben, because I would say that is right out of the gate. That's probably the delicate balance that you need to walk, right? I think all of us do this as consultants. We really want to, as best we can, put ourselves in the shoes of the other person. And I know that, just like you said, I don't want a conversation to feel like an interrogation. So though I may be trying to really pull out a good bit of information, you have to find that balance and ask questions, but probably more importantly, at least in the very beginning, is listen, right? So
Yes.
I think you said when we were talking about this earlier that probably the very first thing you want to say is what brings you on this call today?
So the thing is that without stealing too much thunder, I think you might be alluding to a structural element that Ben uses in his discoveries, right? Because you just mentioned two W's.
That's right. Yeah, the infamous what, where, why, who, and how, right? And I'm sure I messed up the order of those, but those are sort of elements of any sort of discovery process.
Well, how doesn't start with W either, but I'll let you continue.
No, but it does not. But it does get kind of lumped in. It does get kind of lumped in with it. Yeah. Or wow, right? Depends on whether you throw a little W in front of that. But Dave, your point is exactly right. Fundamentally in our heads, I think is, how do I get those questions answered without coming across like a 3-year-old, like a young child? Why, right? But that, that's a bit of an interrogation. So it really is understanding, who in the organization needs to be, involved in this particular process. What has you willing to spend time with us and talk to us today? And we know we're not going to get all those questions answered, as I've said earlier. So, one of the goals of that, especially if it's early stages, could very well be at the end of this, maybe we decide that we need another meeting. We need to spend some more talking. And that's what you alluded to earlier, Amit, is really earning the right to ask more questions, because we are trying to build that established trust, that trusted vendor relationship with our customers. And the reality is sometimes we may decide, okay, gosh, it's not a good fit. We unfortunately can't help you, but hopefully you've had a great interaction with us, and that should your needs change, or, based on this conversation, if something comes up at some point in the future, that you'd be willing to re-engage with us. And that's critical, but that's all part of building relationships, and discovery is so essential in that process.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? Amit, what do you see as the key items that you want to get out of the conversation, aside from, hey, why are you here today? What brings you to the table? What are your critical business issues that you'd like to potentially have Quest help you address and solve? What are some more of those points in the conversation that you think you need to hit when speaking with prospects?
Yes, I think that along the way, you definitely, as Ben alluded to, start to flesh out some of the organizational elements. So when you look at your prospect, you look at them in two ways, right? There's the influence that a prospect can bring within the organization, but then also the decision maker who holds the purse strings in that process. I think both need to be fleshed out. Another thing that my director and I talk a lot about is verifying time and commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So is the timing right? Generally speaking, there might be a challenge that organization's facing, and certainly it might be worth fixing or worth remediating. But is it the right time? Do they have all the right mind share? Do they have budget in place? Do they even have the feasibility to do it time-wise? So many things can factor into time and commitment. But as Ben mentioned earlier, we want to come off as less as being interrogative and more being a partner in the conversation. So a lot of these things like time and commitment and even the organizational elements can be derived simply by asking the right probing questions. And going back to Ben's framework, without making it too cliches, those W's, right, allow you to sort of indirectly uncover some of those other aspects that can allow you to make your discovery very, very strong, or help you understand if you need to, for instance, stop and maybe devise another approach or come back at a different time. All are reasonable conclusions as long as you know how you're getting there.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. And in all of these structures, these times of commitments, I mean, they start with these discovery meetings, right? Hey, thank you very much for your willingness to spend 30 minutes with us. Is that time frame still good for you? We need to be mindful of our prospects and our customers' time. If they've agreed to an hour and we're done in 15 minutes, by crumb, give them that 45 minutes back. That's how you continue to build that trust as a vendor, right? You're not a time sink, in other words. It's valuable to them and it's valuable to you. It's a win-win.
Yep. And another important piece of information to get just after that is, how have you been addressing or attempting to address these issues to date? Do you have a current solution in place or not?
That's right.
That's another good piece of information to pull pretty early on.
Yeah, and along those lines, Dave, it's, even if there's an existing solution in place, how is that working for you? We can kind of expand upon that and attempt to gain a sense of why they might be looking at other solutions. Well, you've got something in place. Why are you talking to us, right? It kind of goes back to that fundamental, how can we help you, or why are we here, without stating exactly that?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of it, there really starts to be a sort of sentence or a statement that gets crafted, right? Which involves the customer's testimony, right? How is this solution helping them reach the desired economic impact? And that is typically, either a reduction in time or whatever that precious, I don't know how you said it earlier, but that precious resource, yes, exactly. That is ultimately the economic impact that our customers are looking for, and we can help them phrase that and come back to that phrasing from time to time, which is really it's a helpful reminder in terms of what we're all sort of aiming for.
Yeah, absolutely. And fundamentally, it's that win-win, right? What's important to the individual that we're speaking to, and more importantly, how does that benefit the overall business? And we do need a sense of those economic drivers. I mean, we deal with a lot of very technical people, and a lot of times we need to help them understand, those larger economic impacts. Are there other people that maybe we should be talking to? What happens in this situation? How are you handling it now? What does that really mean to you? It's all those W's and sometimes the H, right? As part of this process.
And I think both of you would agree that it's really kind of both an art and a science, the discovery process. There's some finesse that needs to take place. And we've even had internal trainings with Quest about this very topic and how to best navigate discovery conversations. And my biggest takeaway from the internal trainings we had was to help answer the question, why Quest and why now?
Hopefully this podcast here today enlightens our listeners to create that alignment very early on in the sales cycle to help us drive towards a real strong economic impact for our customers.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I know it's tough to reel me in a lot of times.
Thanks for joining, Ben.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
If you like what you hear, folks, please don't forget to like and subscribe.